Hello everybody and welcome once again to Tutorials Point. Well, in our interview, don't we all want to create a best impression? Yes, of course. And just to create the best impression, do you really think just talking about good and good all the time is going to do that? Well, not really, because you might be faced with questions which would probably kind of probe deep inside and the answers to which might not be as positive, right? So how do you face that situations, or how do you actually kind of balance these situations so that you don't even end up portraying way too negative, and at the same time whatever you're saying also justifies the question which you've been faced with? Well, there will be many such questions, and in this video we are going to discuss a few such questions and how or what would be the best way to answer them. Let's go ahead. Okay, now interview is not just about your qualifications, your experience, your achievements and blah 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 blah. Well, it is also a situation wherein your interviewer might just ask you, tell me about a time you failed. Now, how do you put it forward? Are you going to just blab it right away that, okay, I tried this and this and I failed and I couldn't do it? Well, do you really think you're going to do that? Of course you don't want to, right? Because you don't want to portray anything that is negative, right? But at the same time, now this is a question which has been asked to you and you are bound to answer it. And not just answer it, you have to answer it in a way such that, I won't exactly say answer, but I'll say you have to package your failure in a way such that it doesn't sound like kind of a grave failure, right? So how do you do that? Well, here we'll discuss. Okay. Now, let's start off with the first point. It says pick up a real failure. Yes, that is right. So when we would be faced with this question, right? Invariably, we might just try to cover up something or maybe just create something for the sake of not, kind of making it so that it doesn't look as big of a failure, right? We might get tempted to do that. But my dear friends, do remember that the person who is interviewing you right there is much more experienced than you are, so you definitely cannot think of fooling them, right? So first of all, pick up a first failure, decide, okay, now this is a failure, this is a question which might just come through my way during my interview. So what is the failure that I'm going to discuss about? So first you pick up a real failure that actually happened, and you're not just faking it out, right? You're not just creating it there and then. It is something that happened with you, right? So start off with that. Then what you're going to do is you're going to define what failure means to you. That is right. So when you define what failure means to you, now, for different people, failure might mean different things. For example, for some, it might mean not, meeting the target which they are being given with, or for some it might be not meeting the timeline, or for some it might be not learning anything from any particular thing, right? So every person has a different definition of failure. So first of all, you need to be clear as to what is the definition, or what is it that you feel or you believe is a failure. For some people, just giving up or losing that kind of passion to continue something would be a failure, right? So different people accordingly have a different definition of failure, and you are going to choose yours. So once you've actually picked up a real failure that you're going to talk about, and after that you've defined what failure means to you, now both these things need to go hand in hand, right? So here you are getting my point now. So when you define what failure means to you, the example which you've picked up should actually pitch in, right? It should not be both the things should not, it's not that they are not aligned to each other, otherwise whatever you say will not make any sense, right? If you say that failure means a specific, this is the specific definition according to me, what I feel, this is what is failure, and you're not pitching in an example which is related to what failure means to you, it will not make any sense, right? Okay, then going forward, last but not the least, you're going to discuss or you're going to tell about what you learned, right? Because when you're faced with this question, the interview interviewer, more than just knowing what you failed in, there is a lot more that he or she intends to know, right? He or she also wants to know as to what do you see failure, like how do you face failure, or what failure actually, what it means to you, right? Not just that, how do you learn from it, right? So there is a lot of stuff that goes behind you telling just a story. The interviewer is not simply interested in, sitting and listening to a narrative coming from you. The interviewer wants to know much more, right? So what he or she wants to know is, indirectly, what they actually want to know is, just in case in this current job, you're faced with something that is a challenge and you're not able to accomplish it, would you be way too depressed and kind of discouraged, and you would not want to get up and try it again? Or would you be a kind of person who would learn and come forward with even more zeal? Or how is it that you would react, right? So that is what actually the interviewer wants to know, right? So which is why whatever story that you want to put forward, you should define what failure means to you and how that particular situation helped you to come out of or maybe to overcome a particular weakness which you had, owing to which you failed. For example, it could be as small as maybe, because of the fact that I wasn't as organized, so I ended up probably missing out a target of mine in my previous job, which I considered as a failure, because according to me, failure really means that you're not able to exert to the fullest of your potential. And though I knew and I know it very well that whatever task was given to me was well within my potential, but I could not fulfill it wholly and solely because of lack of proper organization and planning. So this was actually a very big lesson for me, and going forward I decided that no matter what, planning and organization is going to be something that I'm going to do before starting any task, right? So this is just an example that I'm putting forward. So now you understand, right? So you picked up a real failure, you pitched in what it means to you, and in the end you concluded it by stating what you learned from your failure, right? So this is going to be the best and the most accurate way of putting forward, or the most accurate way and the most polished way of answering this question, right? Because this is a kind of a question which might just land you in a dilemma and you don't know how to answer it, right? Definitely. So friends, now that you have seen this video, I'm sure it's not going to be confusion for you anymore, and now you know how to answer it, and I'm sure you're going to actually be very successful with this answer. Okay. Now again, its story doesn't just end there. Interview is not just a bed of roses, my dear friends. It is a lot of challenges which you have to face. Okay, so tell me about a time you made a mistake. Well, again, you are now again forced to answer something which probably you do not want to portray right there in your interview, right? But what to do? You have to answer it because your interviewer has asked you to answer it. Now, how do you go about this answer? Okay. So first of all, whenever you are probably discussing about a mistake or you're putting it forward, now again, you have to understand what is the interviewer's psychology behind asking you this question, or to be more precise, what is it that the interviewer actually wants to know when he or she asks you, tell me about a mistake that you made? Well, there's a lot, right? It's not just about the mistake that he or she is interested in listening. He or she actually wants to know, how is your attitude, right? Or how do you actually react to situations wherein you feel it was a bummer? So how do you move out of it, or how do you handle the mistakes, or how do you handle mess if there already is mess, and now you have to make everything straight and clear? How do you do that? So that is what the interviewer wants to know. So now that you know what he or she wants to know, so you might want to portray anything that you want to in the best possible form, right? So you're going to start about, you're not going to pass the butter, try in an interview, try not to play a blame game, because that is definitely not a very, very good impression, put forward. It is only normal, right? Would you appreciate any person who is in this habit of passing the buck? Well, not really. So same goes for the interviewer. You definitely don't want to portray that you are busy passing the buck just for the sake of it. So try not doing that, right? Okay. Tell how you would do the same thing differently now. Well, this answer is almost in line with the question that we discussed before, right? So we discussed about, a failure that you've just encountered. So it is quite in line with that, almost the same thing, almost in the, they mean the same almost. So, okay. So now you're going to tell how you're going to do the same thing differently. So indirectly, what are you telling? You are telling the lessons which you've learned out of your mistake, right? So of course you're portraying a mistake, but you're portraying it in a way such that you're not kind of passing the buck, which means you're not a person who is busy blaming. You're not a person who likes to play a blame game. You're more of a solution-oriented person than a problem-oriented person, right? So first of all, you when you were narrating the mistake that you made, so you definitely are not going to pass the buck on anyone. You're a person who takes onus of it, right? So if I did it, I take the onus, and now that I know that I've made a mistake and I'm clear about it, so I know how I have to proceed forward. I'm not going to repeat the same thing again. So you're actually portraying what you learned out of it, right? Which is a very, very kind of a good quality to portray, especially during an interview. Okay, don't forget to mention the lessons which you learned, right? That is right. So you're going to start off with a situation wherein you feel that, okay, you made a mistake and now it is a mess and I have done it, right? So how you're going to portray is that you take the complete onus of the mistake which you made, and you're not passing the buck on anyone else, right? And then now that you've taken the onus of it, okay, now what? So what next is you're going to actually kind of portray or you have to tell or kind of what you're going to say is how you're going to do the same thing in a different way, such that it doesn't end up in a failure again, right? And last but not the least, definitely the lessons which you learned. What better way to conclude this kind of a question? No better way than telling the lessons which you learned, right? So if you're able to package both of these negative situations which we discussed in this video, if you're able to package it in a way such that it doesn't sound as negative and you're not trying to fake it at all, you're taking the onus, the entire onus is on you, well, you're actually done, you're sorted out. You're not trying to fake it, and you're not it doesn't kind of portray you as a person who is just busy blaming others. Rather, you kind of come out as a person who is a problem solver, or who is a solution oriented person, compared to a person who is a problem oriented one, right? Which of course is the best thing which any recruiter would be looking forward to before recruiting any person, right? So this is actually a very, very good quality to handle any situation in life, that you're being solution oriented rather than being problem oriented, and you're a person who is always passionate about learning, right? So there is no harm in making mistakes, or there is no person in this world who's not met with failures. But if you meet with failures or you made mistakes and you're not learning from it, is when the problem starts. Just remember that when you're faced with these questions. So do not forget to mention what the mistakes which you made and what you learned out of it, or the times when you failed and what you learned out of it, right? Rather than just passing the buck. Yes, that is the key to answering these questions. So I'm sure you are now very, very clear and confident about facing your interview. We will see you again in the next video. Till that time, keep learning with Tutorials Point and Tutorix. Have a good day.